All right. Welcome to the 2018 season. It's good to see everybody. I know we've missed each other, so it's good to have this thing back and our relationship back. Looking forward to the season. I'm sure a lot of you had a chance to hear us at Big Ten Media Day, but that message hasn't changed either. Explain exactly what type of team we have, what we have coming in. Really excited about the future of this program starting today. And looking forward to this young, inexperienced football team, seeing what this team can do. And like I said, just because we're young doesn't mean we're not talented. It's going to be a fun training camp with a ton of competition everywhere across the board. And we're really excited for it. So thanks for being here. Really appreciate all the work and all the coverage that you give us every single day. And we appreciate your work all the time. So with that, we'll open up for questions.
Coach, when you look at year one to year two when it comes to offense, what are the key things you want to see improve on that side of the ball?
Well, the one thing is we have so many newcomers on the side of on offense, right? And whether it's the quarterback position who have not played yet, so it's hard to see what do we want those two to improve on individually. The wide receiver position, Ty Johnson's the one that brings the only experience really truly back. Then you have freshmen all around him. You have an offensive line who I think is at least a little deeper. You know, we have 7, 8 guys that will be in the mix if we don't decide to redshirt some freshmen. When you look at the tight end position, I think we're a little bit deeper. We had some creative things with Seth Green. And the running back position, we have Rodney and then freshmen again. So it's hard to see what do we want specifically individually these players to do better because there's so many new faces and so much of this youth movement coming through. But I think the biggest thing is the turnover margin, I think, is absolutely critical for us. I think being able to make smart, decisive decisions with the ball in our hand at the quarterback position, and that's what gets everything moving. Do we block better? Do we our fundamentals and technique better? Do we know the offense better? Do we understand situational football better? To be cliche, all of it. But I think when you talk specifically, our team needs to take a huge jump situationally. Playing the game of football instead of just playing the game of football, and if you have 85 plays on offense, that's 85 different situations when you truly become a smarter player, and a better player is a smarter player. So if we can improve on that, I think that'll help. I think the one position we need to be able to do that with our offense, we want to run the football as well, and we need to be able to be better up front. And with the change with Brian Callahan, I think I've seen that during spring ball. I've seen it during the offseason, and I'm proud of the offensive line and how they're starting to come together and connect. I think we're way more connected this year than we were last year.
Coach, can you talk about, after Johnson, can you talk about the rest of those wide receivers a little bit?
Sure. Where do you want me to start? We got, I don't know how long you got, but Ty Johnson, obviously, I think he had one of the best off seasons out of our entire football team. I thought he did a tremendous job of it in his own way, right? Taking the responsibility of leadership, being almost forced into that role, and being able to bring young people along with him. When you look at Rashad Bateman, he is a true freshman from Georgia, a highly recruited young man. I think he's had a great few months. He's only been here 2 months. But he's going to learn, he's going to fail, he's going to learn, he's going to fail, he's going to grow, he's going to succeed. There's going to be all this for all of them. But I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm really excited to see what Eric Gibson can do, who came to us from Detroit. When you sit there and look at some of the other guys, Jornell Mans, he's still recovering from an ACL that he had in high school, but hopefully this redshirt rule will help him as well as we keep going. Demetrius Douglas, a lot of you got a chance to see Demetrius Douglas last year for a little bit and then had his injury, so we medicaled him, and he's a redshirt freshman too. He's gained about 8 to 10 pounds in the offseason. I think he's a more confident kid. I think he's more confident in the position. Chris Aultman-Bell is another youngster that we brought in, and we redshirted him last year after he broke his foot. So we've had this influx of this young talent. You're going to see a lot of redshirt freshmen, a lot of true freshmen surrounding him. And then there's always some guys that surprise you. Philip Howard played a little bit for us last year. He's got to start to get in the mix. It's going to be very, very competitive on the outside of who plays where. And then you throw another dimension in there with Seth Green. Moving from quarterback to tight end / receiver. And he gives us that big presence. Seth's up to 245 pounds. So when you talk about somebody who's naturally growing and almost like thirsty for another position, when he hit the weight room and kind of got off that quarterback plan, when he went into that, boom. He's gained so much weight, and he's so confident, and I thought he had a tremendous summer. So we'll see what happens. Besides Ty Johnson, it's kind of an open race.
PJ, what are you looking for from your quarterback in terms of whoever you're going to decide on to go with?
Yeah, Chip, great question. Whoever wins the team, right? Consistency, decisive decisions, who can own the mistakes they make, who can change the most, who can get better the most, who can grow fastest. Just because you've won the job maybe at the end of training camp doesn't mean you're going to keep that job as you continue to go. You have to still perform at a high level. And as the other person grows, do they grow ahead of you? So this is going to be a neck-and-neck battle. And this year, which is great, it's just neck-and-neck. There's not neck-neck and three other necks that could possibly even play. I think there's two right now, obviously with Tanner and Zach. So, but I want to see consistency of winning the team on the field, off the field. This person is going to be put in a complete role that they never had before at this level, whether it's throwing a pass, whether it's taking a snap, whether it's leading our football team on and off the field. They're going to have a completely different role now. And I want to see how they can handle that. I know I have an idea because of the type of men they are, and I'm really excited about it because I know them inside and out. We recruited both of them. We know exactly what they're about, and we feel really good about where we're at right now. Now, next year we'll add two more, so it won't sound as crazy to all of you like, they have one scholarship quarterback. Well, we have a lot of other needs too. You'd like to bring in 4 quarterbacks a year, especially from last year. We couldn't do that. We had too many needs, and we're filling that gap with 18 and 19 as we continue to go.
PJ, how do you feel your team has responded from the last 2 games last year?
I think just in general from our season, I don't think anybody just focuses on just 2 games. I think there's a lot of factors that went into those last 2 games that you saw as a football team. I thought that we didn't refuse to lose. I think we got to the end of the year, and I think people assume we've been to bowl games, we'll go to bowl games, and if you're not humble, you will be humbled. And I think our team did that. And as much as you do everything you can to prevent that as a head football coach every single day, when it catches up to you, when it catches up to you. And, we need to be able to have that refuse to lose mentality than just, I hope we win this, and we really want to win. We got to get that out of our systems. And that's a process. That takes a long time to instill that at a high level, right? And that's what we want to get to.
Hey, PJ, do you think that the new redshirt rule will change some of the guys' approach, freshmen coming in, whereas before probably 20 I thought, well, I'm on a redshirt this year, whereas now, hey, I might be able to play in 4 games?
It's a great question, 100%. I think the number one factor of the new redshirt rule, what that does is it allows the entire team, no matter who you are, no matter what year you are, no matter where you are in the depth chart, to always stay focused. Now, as head coaches, we like to think everybody's focused on our football team, but we're not naive either. So we know that there's some guys, after they know they're being redshirted, that will kind of, okay, well, I'm being redshirted. You see a little bit of a dip in performance, maybe on and off the field. You got to cross your T's, dot your I's this year. I mean, this is like AAA baseball. You're down there, you just struck out 9 and had a great practice, and it basically like a baseball game. You're getting called up. You're being brought up, and you got to play. And so it's going to be unique, whether we play a person, skip 2 games, play a person, skip 2 games, play them all at the front end, play them on the back end, wait for injury. It's going to be interesting how this whole thing works. And with us, it couldn't have come at a better time.
Fluid, or are you charting it out in camp, how you might do that with certain guys?
It is always evolving because right now we think we have this plan, but that plan as of tomorrow will probably change. Just based on injury, based on performance. Remember, we have our first big recruiting class that we've brought in, just got here 2 months ago, and we haven't even watched them play football yet. We've seen them, move around, weight room stuff, conditioning, some individual work, but we haven't seen them play football. So we might have an idea who we're going to play, who we want to play, and then we get there, we're like, okay, you're not as good as we thought, not ready, or hey, you're farther along than we thought, or you're exactly what we thought you were. And then you have other guys on your team, that have been redshirted, haven't been redshirted. You could even see guys that maybe played even last year have a redshirt year because it's still in the infant stages of getting this thing to where we need it to be. So it just all depends. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where I think every head coach in the country is going to come back after this year and be like, okay, what did we like? What didn't we like? What did we screw up? What did we absolutely flop on? And what did we do really well? What did we like? Very similar to the new recruiting rule where you can have the official visits in the summer. Everybody did that for the first time. So there's all these new avenues. Some things we like, some things we didn't like, some things if we could do it again, we'd like to change. So next year we'll be able to do that better. And anytime you have a new rule, I think that's where you start.
PJ, with a young roster, do you feel like as you go through August that you'd have more contact or maybe even scrimmage more than you would if you had more of a veteran or experienced roster team?
The question is about, are we going to scrimmage more because we're pretty young? You'd like to be able to do that. But when you're young and the depth issue you have, that your depth is your youth, you got to be careful. right? We have 9 scholarship offense and defensive players. We got around 14, 15 offense and defense scholarship players. That's around 23 upperclassmen, right? And so you've got to get the experience. You've got to get the scrimmaging. You've got to get that football before you play football, but you also have to keep your team healthy, right? And there was a battle last year. We didn't have any depth. It was hard to scrimmage. So one, we're finding out what can they do and how can they do it. But if they get hurt, we don't have anybody behind them, right? We talked about that with 4 linemen when we got here, and that was hard to even go through spring ball. So let alone rebuild that within 1 year and feel comfortable. Like I said, I think we're deeper at O-line as an example, but we're not deep with competitive depth yet, right? Where if you lose 2 guys, you still feel really good. We're not at that point yet. So it's going to be a balance. You might see a lot more scrimmages, maybe not just as long, because it is the game of football, and we got to see them play. And it is the game of football. We've got to be able to do it.
What are your expectations for some new transfers that are in now? And O.J. Smith, Chris Williamson, Royal Silver, all guys that are expected to contribute this fall?
Yeah, I think O.J. Smith and Royal have to do a tremendous job of plugging themselves in and be who we think they are and be who we know they are. And I think they've been – it's one thing to come into a place and have to now be there and then have to wait out a whole year and sit there knowing that you cannot play. And that's tough for some young people. I thought both of them have attacked the offseason the way you want them to. I think they've both grown a lot. I think Royal Silver has come along big time from last year. I think OJ knows what type of role he's in. But when you put 2 guys in, upperclassmen, who you now need to perform and lead and be that anchor of that defensive line and lead that young group of defensive line around you, when you don't have the performance attached to the experience plus the actual when I should lead, that's difficult sometimes. So we have to do a great job of bringing them along, not only just on the field, but we've got to bring them along mentally, knowing that, hey, you are going to fail. It's not going to be easy. You've got to grow. You've got to be able to handle that and respond the right way. But I'm proud of the both of them. They've done a great job. Chris Williamson, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. We've got to be able to keep him healthy. We've got to keep him staying out there. But that's a two-way street and being able to continue to do that. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do because he was somebody we wanted to rely on and brought in to kind of plug a hole. But we got so many young people back there now in the secondary, very young, not deep, but young, that we're going to find out what they can do as well.
When it comes to the secondary, where do you see things behind Huff and Winfield as safety spots?
That's a great question. Remember, I said we have some depth, but we don't have the competitive depth yet. There are going to have to be some freshmen that play back there. Between Antoine and Huff, that's pretty much solid as of right now that I feel really comfortable about going into the year, but we know that doesn't always necessarily work out that way. The more freshman DBs that can play, the more we can be creative with Antoine Winfield Jr., okay, but you might see a C.J. Smith be at a safety. You might see Josh Awney as a true freshman be back there. Benny Sapp might get opportunities earlier than we've talked about. You could see a rotation of different guys, maybe a Chenault go back there at some times. We have to be very creative. I feel like we're more athletic, and I feel like we're more talented, but we just don't know where all the pieces fit yet. And until you get out there and you play, that's when you kind of put this puzzle piece together. And that's why I kind of call it year one, is because you're finally starting to put pieces somewhere and building off of that. And, we're so young and inexperienced where we're not relying on so many guys from last year that it's a little bit more difficult to do it, but it's really exciting. And that's what's so fun about this. I talk about youth and inexperience, and people can say that's an excuse and finding different ways. That is not that's not the truth. The truth is that's the truth. We're very young, very inexperienced. We're 126 out of 128 in terms of experience on a football team. That's not where you want to be, but that's exciting when you're in year 2/year 1. And you have this influx of youth, and that's fun to do that and build that. But I do know they're going to make mistakes. I do know they're not going to be perfect. The great thing about when juniors and seniors are playing really well, that means they failed so much that they failed enough to be successful. Well, when is this failing going to happen for these young people? It's going to happen. And you're going to come to practice and be like, oh, boy. And then you're going to see days like, wow, look at that youth, that talent. And look at Rodney Smith leading those guys. And look at Thomas Barber, joining forces with a true freshman at linebacker. And that's what's exciting about building this thing.
How is Sapp physically now?
I mean, he looks really good. Again, we haven't played football, so I'm not sure. But when you look at him physically and you watch him move and you watch him backpedal, he's got a lot of twitch and explosion. Looks like he feels comfortable, like he's playing full speed on it, and he's not favoring anything. But we've got to watch him as well. He's had so many injuries that we've got to be able to get him to a point where he's not overdoing it, but he's still competing for spots.
How do you balance? Rodney's obviously a very tough player and can carry a lot, but how do you balance not putting too much on his shoulders where you don't have Shannon behind him?
Yeah, I mean, Rodney Smith is he's such an asset to this football program, and we can't look at him as he's a superhero and he's inhuman. He's human, but he's like a superhero, but he's still human. And when he's human, you can be hurt. You can run down. And that's what we have to be able to balance. Behind him, you've got Mohamed Ibrahim, who had a great spring, right? And then you bring in some freshmen. So you've got Nolan Edmonds, you've got Bryce Williams, and you start to look at who's behind him, and you say, okay, well, they're really young. So it might be Rodney, and then the other three getting reps, taking those reps off him. It might not just be a 1, 2, and 3 type feel. It might just not be a pair and a spare, right? We might have, the big tractor tire, and then you might have the other wheels that you have them, but you just got to use them efficiently. But you can't run them, over so many miles. You don't take your spare tire and you put it on there and you drive 80 miles an hour for 500 miles. You don't do that on your spare tire, right? So you want to be able to bring these freshmen along at a pace that they can handle, but you also still want to take off some of the weight with Rodney, but you're going to have to rely on him. It's part of getting Rodney to be able to do multiple things, not just sit in the backfield, to be able to give those freshmen carries, give those guys an opportunity, but also have Rodney on the field at the same time. So this is what's fun about training camp. Our identity, our team could be completely different than it's been last year, and it will be. It's just how we creatively can make it all work and knowing exactly what this team can do and not trying to do too much to put them in a disadvantage.
At the linebacker spot, how much does having players with unique skill sets like Kamal Martin really help the flexibility that you have to be creative?
Well, you can be flexible, right? And that's the biggest thing we have. And the more players, young players, that we have being able to help us at those positions, the more flexible we can be. When you sit there and look across the board and you look at our guys that are already playing and you start to look at Thomas Barber and you look at Kamal and you look at, the Blake Cashmans, everybody knows that. Okay, but what about behind the curtain? What about the next 6? A lot of them are going to be freshmen or true freshmen or redshirt freshmen behind that. So the faster the evolution of those guys take place, the more creative Rob Smith can be. And like I said before, as the years go on, you're going to see this defense evolve. And you're going to start to see so much creativity based on the players we're recruiting, the players we're developing in-house, that's where we're going to get to. But when you're either handcuffed by depth issues or roster issues or scholarship issues or youth issues, it's hard to do that. And you don't want to fit the square peg into the round hole. You want to be able to have that maturation process happen naturally. And sometimes when there's a big thing. I was watching NFL Network last night, and they're like, the worry of playing a first-round pick. You know what I mean? And there's this big worry out there, and Reggie Bush was talking about it. It was interesting hearing his perspective. It's the same thing with freshmen. And so there's some that can play early and can handle that. There's some that can't play early and won't handle that. So we're putting all this pressure on them right now that they have to be the depth, but there could be some that play and don't play and create different issues for us on defense, whether we can be more creative or less creative.
For Kirk Shiraka in his first year, how much of his offense was implemented and then run? And then coming into year 2 with changeover at quarterback, how much can be implemented and run and quarterback acumen within that?
Well, I think we were a lot more limited last year with what we gave our entire football team. What could they handle? What could we do? What was the mastery process of it? Year 1 is all about learning, right? That's why I call it year 0. It's just learning. Everybody's getting to know each other. I'm getting to know you. You're getting to know me. Our players, academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, everything they're doing is for the first time. That's a learn year. That's just row. Right? Well, now we're starting to be able to master academically, athletically, socially, spiritually across the board. And when you start to have that, you can do more. Remember, Kirk Shiraka was the same coordinator that went 1-11 at Western Michigan our first year. And him and I were both the worst of whatever we were doing. And as we went, you get to the next year 3 and year 4. I mean, he's top 25 offenses in the country and one of the most efficient offenses in the country. 70% completion percentages across the board. And when you get to that level, you know when you're there. We don't know if we're there yet. We'll find out. But it's that mastery of that system. And then you know where you're at. And one thing I think Kirk Shiraka does a great job of is he gives our players what they can handle. You stretch them, you push them, but then they show you whether they can handle that or not yet. And with a young team, that's one of the things you got to find out as you keep going.
Coach, with the new freshman rule where they can play 4 games, how do you go about that philosophically or strategically as to deciding what you want to do and when you want to do it?
That's a great lunch question, because it's something you don't really know what you're going to do yet because everything continues to evolve from day to day. You have a plan of what you want to do. I'd like to get every single freshman that we bring in that can have an opportunity, right, to play and be redshirted, to play and be redshirted. That is what it's for. Give them that experience and let them go. But I also want to make sure that if they're good enough, they play the whole year and you still have that redshirt year available. Is somebody going to play? Are you playing it just to fill a gap, and then all of a sudden that gap becomes an actual hole, and now you have to play him in that position? Or is somebody better to play and keep that redshirt year? So it's one of those things that will evolve. There's guys from injury that can come back. We're just excited to see how it works. I'm sure like everybody else, I don't think anybody has the perfect formula right now, and I don't think every year it's going to be handled different every year. This year, it couldn't have come at a better time for us. It's the best rule to help us. It gives this young, inexperienced football team a ton of experience no matter what. And that's what you want as you continue to build for the future. But we also got to make sure they're the right guys to get that done. And when they're in there, they got to do their job because Rodney Smith and all of our seniors, they deserve to go out the best way they possibly can. And that's the whole vision of the year, to get them to have the best year they possibly can have in 2018. And what that looks like, we'll find out. And that's up to us creating an environment to grow and continue to be the best football team we can possibly be. And that's why it's so exciting.
Jay, when you're young, particularly concerning along the lines, offensive, defense, when you're going against some guy that might be 4 years older, how are you physically there in terms of handling that kind of?
You put 12 players on the field, and you just hope that they don't see them. I'm kidding. No, what you really want to be able to do is, that you're going to, when you have a young, immature group of guys that you're going to rely on up front to play, you've got to put them in the best positions they can be successful, where the technique, the get off, the advantage on offense, snap count, those things, they can use that instead of the strength part. We played, I think, 18 or 19 freshmen my second year at Western Michigan. And I don't like to use comparisons, but we were sitting there going, wow, this is going to be interesting. And believe it or not, they shocked us and surprised us. Now, I think it's 2 different leagues, right? And going up against Wisconsin or Iowa with tons of seniors, being in their culture for so long, being the way that they recruit and that dynamic of the way they recruit not changing for so many years, that cultural sustainability. They've been able to recruit to the same thing over and over and over and over. And we've had 3 head coaches in 5 years with different philosophies, and you're all bringing in different players, right, and making them all fit. So we're looking forward to the day we can continue to keep doing that and bringing in that talent. But up front, it's going to be a strength issue. But the older guys we have to set the tone. And we as coaches have to make sure that when we evaluate, we put them in a best position to be successful. And when we're calling plays, put them in a position to be successful. What they can do, we have to do. And if they can't do it, we can't put them in there. And that's one thing we're just going to have to continue to look at. And that's the decisions we have to make, whether we on redshirt guys, play guys. But I'll give you an example. Curtis Dunlap Jr. and Daniel Faalele are 2 great examples. I mean, do we redshirt them or do we play them? Well, we'll find out. Where do we play them at? Is Daniel really a guard or is he really a tackle? We'll find out, right? I mean, I think he's one thing, but this year he might be another thing, okay? And as we go into the future, I could switch him position, but this year I might need him in a certain position, which is a challenge in itself. But the Jared Weilers, the Daniel Greens, the Olsons, the guys that have played a lot of football for us have to be the leaders and be able to bring these guys along with them and have that mentality to refuse to lose.
Take about 2 more.
Can you describe the process of finding Rashad Bateman at a satellite camp in Georgia and what stood out about him when you first met him?
Oh, wow. Well, again, I haven't seen him play football with us yet, so I'm excited, just as excited as all of you. And hopefully you're happy with all the times we kept open for all of you, and so you get to watch these guys mature. But Mo Lindquist, I thought, did an elite job of recruiting him. And one thing is Rashad's a relationship-driven person. He's got incredible qualities, very charismatic, wonderful person, does the right things, and just an incredible human being, an incredible upbringing and story. But the one thing I'll say is he's a very loyal person. And so when he didn't have anything and we went down to Georgia, we knew we were looking at him, but we knew we had to make a decision at that moment. Because if we wait on this guy, there's no way we're going to get him. The only advantage we have is if we have him in camp, we offer him, and somehow, some way, he is crazy enough to jump in the boat at that particular moment, and he did. And then he has this influx of offers throughout the entire year and the end of the year, and he stayed true to who he was and never wavered. The only question he continued to have was, do you have Zaxby's in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities? And I said, no, we got Raising Cane's. And he's like, okay, well, we'll see. And then he came here, and he actually likes Raising Cane's better. So that really works. And those are the things that you remember as you go through. And his family is just incredible. Getting to know them and building the relationships with them, that's what it should look like, and that's what it should be like. And now he's here, and you would have thought he's been here 5 years. Just the comfort level because of how much he poured into the relationship part and how much that meant to him.
Final question. So many people want to measure success on the football field in wins and losses, and I know you've said before that that's not what it's all about for you going into this year. How do you measure growth in a football team during this season?
I measure it by having peace, knowing that our team did everything they could to be the best they could be, and they did everything they could to represent themselves in a first-class fashion, academically, athletically, socially, and spiritually, because numbers will always get stale. If we win so many games someday, that will be the expectation. I remember back at Western Michigan, and here we are going from 1-11, and year 4 we're 11-0, and people are saying if we lose this game, the next game it's all for naught. I'm sitting there looking at them like, we've won 11 games so far. And we remember 3 years ago where we were at. And I understand the expectation, but holy cow, that changed quickly, didn't it? So the number doesn't necessarily mean that much to me. The number, knowing that we're getting the most out of our football team. Somebody else can judge the number. That's never going to be something that I look at to whether it's a success or not. Numbers, I'm 5'9". That didn't mean I couldn't play football. That's a number, right? And same thing with a football team. Numbers, they give us data, they give us results, they give us information, and then how we respond to that is what I measure the success on. And we all know that in terms of it's not what you have or it's not what you've accomplished. It's the peace you have inside your heart and mind, knowing that you did everything you could to be where you're at. We all have failing. We all have expectation. We all have disappointments. But when you sit there and you measure a group of 17 to 22-year-old young men of how they did, a number will never do that. Not as long as I'm the head coach.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Row the boat, Sky Ma, go Gophers. I look forward to seeing all of you at practice here soon. So thanks, everybody.